In this video, I'm going to share with you 14 tips to be more productive on your Mac computer. And in the interest of being super productive, that's all I'm going to say for the intro. Okay, let's get into it. Let's say that you've captured a short video on your iPhone or on a different device, and you have a bunch of video files, but you'd like to bring them all together to create one video. You could import them into a dedicated video app like Final Cut Pro or iMovie, but this takes time, you need to know what you're doing, and if it's a paid app, then you need to have paid for the app. It's actually much quicker and easier to do with a built-in Mac app. Right-click on the first video file that you'd like to include in your video and choose Open With. Choose QuickTime from the available options. Then, with the file open in QuickTime, drag and drop the next video file onto the QuickTime app. This will add the second video file to the first one, creating a long video. You can do this multiple times if you need to, and you can drag the individual elements down at the bottom of the screen to reorder them. If you double-click on a video element, you can use the yellow bars to trim the start and end point. Simply press Trim when you're happy with what you have. When you're happy with the end video, simply press Command and S on your keyboard to save it. If you're familiar with managing files on a Windows PC, you'll know that you can use Ctrl and X to cut a file and Ctrl and V to paste that file somewhere else. In other words, you can move the file from one folder to another. The problem is Command and X doesn't work on Mac when it comes to files. The only option you have is Command and C, which copies the file. This means that you're then pasting a copy of the file to another folder, and you have to remember to go back to the original file and delete it, otherwise you've got a duplicate. So press Command and C to copy as usual, but instead of pressing Command and V when you go to paste, press Command Option V. This will paste the file to the new location, but it will also delete the original. In other words, it will move the file for you. In a video all about being more productive, it seems only right that I talk about a tool that is quite literally designed to make you way more productive, and that's Magical AI, who are sponsoring today's video. We waste so much time every day doing repetitive tasks, replying to basically the same emails, filling in online forms, trying to capture data from websites. Magical AI is a free Chrome extension that allows you to automate repetitive work, saving users on average around 7 hours a week. I'm loving the templates feature, where you can input smart text templates that you can call upon on any website and drop into something in an instant. So for example, I rely on people supporting my channel, whether that's leaving a comment on a video, becoming a Patreon, whatever it might be, and I want to be able to leave them a personal thank you for their support, but there's only so many ways that you can say thank you. So I can take some time to make a load of thank you templates, and then when I want to drop one in, I just tap the slash key twice and choose it from the list. The great thing is I can still add in those personal touches, like the person's name or username. It's great in email too. I get tons of emails every day pitching something to me, and honestly, I have to turn down most of them. I don't have time to reply to all of them, but I can use Magical AI to tap a button and have it automatically draft a polite thanks but no thanks reply for me instead. It's honestly like having a PA sat next to me. So if you're interested in working smarter rather than harder, download Magical by visiting getmagical.com or by following the link in the description of this video. The problem with working on any screen, whether it's a small screen like the one on a MacBook Air or a big screen like a Pro Display XDR, is that eventually you're going to run out of space to put apps. You might work really well like this, but if you're someone who prefers a less cluttered setup, you should definitely explore the Mac's ability to create multiple desktops. To do this, enter Mission Control, which is generally accessed by pressing the F3 key. Move your cursor to the top of the screen. You'll see a thin bar that shows you the desktops that you currently have open on your Mac. Move your cursor into this to expand the view, and on the right-hand side, you can see a plus button that you can use to create a new desktop, or space, as Apple calls them. You would then treat each of these spaces like any normal desktop. Let's say, for example, that you've got the Mail app open along with Notes in one space, and then the Keynote app along with Safari in another. You can switch between spaces by entering Mission Control and clicking to choose the different space. If you have a Mac with a trackpad, you can use 4 fingers to swipe from left to right or right to left to move immediately between the different spaces. This is definitely the quickest way to work between them. You can use spaces in isolation, or you can drag items from one space to another, drag apps from one space to another, and copy and paste between them as you'd expect. To close a space, hover your cursor over it until you see the cross in the upper left of the screen. Press this to close the space down. Your Mac has a little known but extremely useful tool called Automator. The Automator app comes standard on all Macs and allows you to automate simple repetitive tasks. To open Automator, press Command and Spacebar and type in Automator. You may need to choose File and then New, but ideally you want this window to appear. Here you can choose the type of automation that you want to create. I'll select Quick Action and then press Choose. In this list, you can see all of the different actions that you can assign to a quick action. There are too many to cover in this short video, so let me show you a practical example that many people might find useful. Let's say that we want to create an automation to crop images to square at the touch of a button. I'll drag the Crop Images action into the space on the right of the screen. I'll leave the 2 dimensions box as it is. In the Scale Before Crop option, I'll choose Scale to Short Side. You can play around with the width and height options depending on the image quality that you usually work with. I found that a value of 2000 for both options tends to give good quality images regardless. Press Command and S to save and give the action a name. I named mine Crop Square. Then in Finder, you can select some images, right-click and navigate to Quick Actions. Choose the automation that we just created. And just like that, you'll see that the images have been cropped to a square shape. Now, it is important to note that this isn't the same as manually cropping images in a photo editing app, where you have more control over the crop style. Automator uses the center point of the image as an anchor, so this won't look amazing for every image. But if it's something that you have to do often, well, now you can do it at the touch of a button. There are many other options available, including pulling URLs from web pages, splitting PDFs into individual pages, and quickly rotating images. Feel free to explore and see if there's anything here that you would find useful. You can lock your Mac by clicking on the Apple icon in the upper left and selecting Lock Screen. Alternatively, you can press Command, Control, and Q simultaneously. If you have a Mac with Touch ID, you can also briefly tap the Touch ID button and hold it for just a second to lock your Mac. If you want to quickly rename any file on your Mac, simply select it using your mouse or trackpad and tap the return key. This will take you straight into the renaming option. Type in the new name and press the return key once again. If you'd like to rename lots of files all at the same time, use Command and A to select the files, then right-click and choose Rename. The Rename Finder items window will appear. You can choose to replace text, where you input a specific word that you'd like to replace with another word. Or you can choose to add text, where you'll add a specific line of text before or after the existing names. The option that most people would choose is Format Name. In the Custom Format field, you type in the name that you want to include in these files, and then for most people, they're going to include a number afterwards. You can preview how the names are going to look at the bottom of this window, and you just press Rename when you're happy with your selection. Stop using Google every time that you need to perform a conversion, like currency or weight. Instead, use Spotlight Search. Tap Command and Spacebar to access Spotlight Search, and then begin typing whatever you want to convert. In many cases, your Mac will intelligently figure out the conversion based on your location and preferences. For example, if I start typing $4,000, my Mac will assume that I want that figure in GBP because I'm based in the UK. But if you want it in euros instead, you can just continue writing and tap euros. This worked with lots of different currencies when I was trying this. If you want to know a temperature, you can type in the number. Here's another useful tip. To get the degree symbol on your Mac, hold the Option key and tap 0. You can then simply type C for Celsius or F for Fahrenheit. During my experimentation for this video, I found that this method also works for weights, measurements, and volume measurements. You can even use it for time by typing something like time in Tokyo, for example. You might like to put your main apps in the dock at the bottom of your screen, but that can get cluttered quite quickly. Or you might be someone who likes to go to Launchpad and try to find your apps from there, but I find that it can get really cluttered as well, especially if you have a lot of apps on your Mac. If you aren't already, I would recommend that you start using Spotlight Search to open your apps. So let's say that I want to open Adobe Audition. I would press Command and Space on my keyboard to open Spotlight Search and start typing Audition. You can see that for me, just 4 letters in, after typing AUDI, my computer has recognized that I'm trying to open Adobe Audition. I'd simply press the return key to open the app. Once you get the hang of this, it's extremely quick to open apps using this method. Here's an image of a pizza restaurant that I've been sent by a friend who's walking around in a nearby town. With this image open in preview, you can see that I can select text just like I would if this were a regular document. I can then right-click and copy the text to paste into a different app. Also, if my Mac recognizes any part of the text here as a phone number, physical address, or an email address, you'll be able to see this when you hover your cursor over it. So for example, if I hover over the phone number, you can see that my Mac has recognized that this is a phone number. I can call the number directly from my Mac using the connection between my Mac and my iPhone. So if I wanted to order a pizza, I could do the entire thing from my desk without having to lift a finger. This feature also works on videos. I found that this tends to work best if you can either open the video in the preview app or open it in the Photos app. But here you can see I have a video paused with a mixture of text, dates, and even web addresses. I can use my cursor to select text like I did in the image, or I can press the text button in the bottom right corner and see all of the available options, including the website, which I could then click onto to visit. By the way, if you prefer to have content like this in a written format, there's a PDF version of this video complete with screenshots, and you can access it along with all other PDFs I've created, plus future ones, for just $5 a month. You can either scan the QR code that you can see on screen, or follow the link in the description of this video to learn more. Do Not Disturb is one of the best ways to stay focused while you're working, and it's incredibly quick and easy to toggle on and off on the Mac. Simply hold down the Option key on your keyboard and click on the date and time using your mouse or trackpad. This toggles Do Not Disturb on and off. If you have all of your Apple devices connected to the same Apple ID on the same Wi-Fi network, this will also toggle on and off on those devices. Start using Safari profiles if you're not already. To do this, open Safari, go to Safari in the top menu and choose Settings. Click on the Profiles tab, then use the plus button to begin creating a profile. The way that profiles work is that you can have a different profile for all the different ways in which you use Safari. So the most common one, and the one that I tend to use, is to have one for your personal browsing and one for your work browsing. Once you've created a work profile, you can see at the top left of Safari there is a button titled Personal. Click on this and choose New Work Window. A new Safari window opens, but the great thing about profiles is that everything I do in this work profile window is separate from my personal profile. So if I were to log into a Google account, for example, it would only be logged in this work profile. I could log into a totally separate Google profile on my personal account and switch between the two. I'm using Google as an example, obviously. This would work for any website. My browsing history while in the work profile will be contained within the work profile, and I can also choose to run or disable specific extensions on each profile. Profiles are genuinely one of the best features of Safari, and most people that I speak to either aren't using them or don't know about them. Again, like many of the other features that we've talked about in this video, if you're logged into your Apple ID on multiple devices and using iCloud, your profiles will sync across all your devices. When you double-click at the top of a window on your Mac, chances are by default that window is going to maximize itself to the full height of your display. This is known as the zoom effect, and some people really like it. I think a more practical use for this is to have the window disappear down into your dock. This makes managing your windows easier, in my opinion. To enable this, open System Settings, choose Desktop and Dock from the left-hand menu, and where it says double-click a window's title bar to, change this from Zoom to Minimize. Now, each time that you double-click at the top of a window, that window will disappear down into your dock. Also, notice how quickly my windows disappear. This is because I've changed the effect when windows are minimized from the Genie effect to the Scale effect. This option is just above the previous option that we looked at. Oh, also, while we're talking about displays, probably one of the most frustrating features that Apple added into macOS Sonoma is this setup where each time you click on your wallpaper, it reveals your desktop. Most people I speak to hate this. I hate it too. To disable it, look for the Desktop and Stage Manager section of the screen, and where it says click wallpaper to reveal desktop, change this to only in Stage Manager. Lastly, I want to show you something regarding managing windows. Notice how on my display at the moment, I have lots of windows open with some in the foreground and some in the background. If I click and hold on the window in the background and then move it around, the Mac automatically brings it into the foreground. If you don't want this to happen and you'd rather move it around in the background without disturbing your other windows, press and hold the Command key before you click and drag. Doing this allows you to move any window around without disturbing the order of the others. If you're like me and you have an audio interface but you also use Bluetooth headphones, you may want to know how to quickly change the output of your sound. Click on Control Center in the upper right of your screen, then click on the arrow next to Sound, and you'll see all of your audio output options. If you'd also like to see your input options, press and hold the Option key before you press the arrow next to Sound. This will show you both the output and input options on the same menu. Play around with that Option key in Control Center as it opens up some additional options that you wouldn't have seen if you just clicked. For example, if you press and hold the Option key before clicking on Wi-Fi, you'll see much more in-depth Wi-Fi information. The same goes for Bluetooth. When you consider that there are keyboard shortcuts not just for the macOS in general, but also for pretty much every single app that you use, you realize that there are far too many for people to remember all of them. That said, there are a small handful that I think are always going to come in handy. Command and Q is a really handy keyboard shortcut as it enables you to properly quit and close down an app without having to go up into the File menu. Command, Shift, and the number 5 altogether allow you to enter the screenshot and screen recording option. Pretty much all of your screenshot and screen capture needs can be covered using this menu. Command and H allows you to quickly hide the app that you have active at that moment in time. This doesn't quit the app, it just minimizes it into the dock. So if you're ever looking at something that you don't want other people to know about for whatever reason, and someone walks into the room, remember that keyboard shortcut. Command and the spacebar open Spotlight search, which I genuinely believe is one of the most useful productivity tools on the Mac. I've actually made a video all about Spotlight search, which I will link to in the description of this video. Command and the Tab key lets you rotate through open apps. Command, Shift, and the Tab key lets you rotate in the opposite direction through open apps. Command and the tilde key allows you to quickly bounce between open examples of the same app. So I have Notion open all day while I'm working with multiple windows open at a time, and this is a handy little shortcut to help me with that. So there you go, 14 ways to use your Mac to be more productive. What do you think? Anything that should have been included in this list? Drop me a comment and let me know. And as ever, if you found this video useful, do please consider leaving me a like and subscribing to my channel for more content like this in the future. See you on the next video.